Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my brand new rank 19, level 50 Shadow Steelix. I've been walking this Shadow Steelix for months working on getting those XL candies, and thanks to the World Championship event having Onyx spawns, at long last, it is finally complete. I wasn't sure what to run with Shadow Steelix, so I ended up trying out Chillis FM's team of Toxicroak, Shadow Steelix, and Guzzlord, and ended up having some very nice sets with it. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out level 50 Shadow Steelix in the Open Ultra League. Picking up a terrible lead in the first match, Toxicroak into Shadow Charizard. Immediate save switch into the Shadow Steelix, and my opponent is going to respond with Poliwrath. Considering I have Guzzlord in the back, I'm very happy to bait out the counter user, and thanks to having Psychic Fangs, Shadow Steelix can actually put in some serious work against the Poliwrath. I commit the shield on the Scald. Poliwrath does get the attack drop from the Scald, which is unfortunate. I'm going for Psychic Fangs number 2. I'm able to get the shield back from the Poliwrath, continuing to farm up with the Shadow Steelix, and at this point, I'm just going to let it go. Poliwrath goes for the Ice Punch, but the Shadow Steelix refuses to die, hanging on with 1 HP, making one final Psychic Fangs, and grabbing an ever-important shield advantage for my team. They're going to fire off the Ice Punch. I'm going to let this go, and I'm going to trust in Guzzlord to close out the game. In comes Guzzlord, but in the back, they have a second counter user, and right off the bat, we are being hard countered. This is absolutely awful. Dragon Claw connects into the Buzzwole, but Buzzwole can go for lunge here. Super effective damage and lowering my attack. Guzzlord cannot make another Dragon Claw, and I'm in an incredibly difficult position here. Toxicroak luckily is able to resist both of Buzzwole's charge moves here, but I need to try and counter down to win. Buzzwole able to make it to a last second charge move, and I'm forced to give up my final shield. I do have the back-to-back Sludge Bombs here. In comes the Charizard, going for Sludge Bomb number 1. No shields remaining for the opponent. Sludge Bomb connects, and Toxicroak wins CMP over the Charizard. Sludge Bomb KOs the Charizard, and that is a good game. Picking up the dream lead in the next match, Toxicroak into Cobalion. Opponent is going to save switch into Giratina Altered, and Giratina will get absolutely crushed by Shadow Steelix. One of the things that I've loved about running this new Shadow Steelix is its ability to completely shut down not only Giratina Altered, but Cresselia, 2 of the most powerful legendary Pokemon in the format. Giratina continuing to farm up. They're going to be firing off Shadow Sneak after Shadow Sneak, but Shadow Steelix simply does not care. Opponent firing off a last second charge move. I end up getting a Dragon Tail for free, and that will grab the KO. Opponent can send in the Cobalion, but Cobalion's going to have to deal with the Earthquake, so the opponent makes a sensational catch, catching the Earthquake onto the Mandibuzz. But bad news for the Mandibuzz, they're now stuck trying to get rid of Guzzlord, and this Mandibuzz is running Snarl. That means their fast moves basically do no damage, and they're reliant on Aerial Ace, which is a very poor charge move. And now, with Guzzlord, I get consistent fast move pressure with Dragon Tail, and I can just continue to chip away at its HP with the Dragon Claws as well. They're firing off the Aerial Ace here. My switch timer and theirs will both come up before I'm able to get rid of the Mandibuzz, so I do have to watch for a potential switch here, and the opponent concedes the match. We see a Core Breaker on the lead in the next match, Toxicroak into Defense Deoxys. Defense Deoxys has the ability to hit this entire team for super effective damage, so definitely not a great Pokemon to see. They are 1 counter away from the back-to-back Psycho Boost, so I throw 1, switch, and catch the Psycho Boost onto the Shadow Steelix. Not only is this resisted, but it lowers their attack by 2 stages, so they're forced to switch out, and in comes Greninja. It's a bit unfortunate to see Greninja here, as this team is very strong to Greninja with the Toxicroak and the Guzzlord, but unfortunately, Steelix not a particularly big fan. They're going to fire off the Night Slash, hoping for the boost, and the boost does not happen. I'm going to send in the Toxicroak here. Toxicroak, the question will be, can I live a Hydro Cannon? This is going to hit for massive damage. Toxicroak barely able to hang on and get the farm down. I do leave with a Sludge Bomb loaded. The question is, what is their final Mon? And it's Regice. Okay, opponent running some serious spice. I land the Sludge Bomb, and I send in the Guzzlord. Guzzlord continuing to farm up. I'm going to shield, as it could be a potential Blizzard or a Focus Blast. It is the Focus Blast. Opponent sends in Deoxys, and this is actually what I needed to happen. I'm intentionally going for a Dragon Claw here. The reason being is most Deoxys run Psycho Boost and Thunderbolt, which means their energy is completely walled. I'm too bulky for them to counter down, so I can use this as an opportunity to fully commit to the farm down, and with this big of an energy lead, there's just nothing the Regice can do. In comes the Regice, and Guzzlord has way too much energy. Dragon Claw will be shielded by the opponent, and the opponent concedes the match. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Toxicroak into Giratina Altered. I throw one counter, I'm going to save switch into Shadow Steelix, and my opponent is going to respond with Cobalion. This is a pretty awful matchup for the Shadow Steelix, but the good news is the threat of an Earthquake will force them to throw their energy. So at the very least, I've baited out Cobalion, which is an absolute hard counter for Guzzlord, and now I can use this as an opportunity to get a ton of farm on Toxicroak. Toxicroak is going to fully wall Cobalion's standard moveset, so they're forced to go for the Sacred Swords here. Sacred Sword is a pretty good charge move, but Toxicroak, thankfully, is able to resist it. So Toxicroak is going to get the full counter farm down, leaving with a lot of energy. The energy isn't particularly useful against Giratina, but I will still get some chip damage with the Mud Bomb before I send in Guzzlord. In comes Guzzlord, and the opponent is staying in here with Giratina. Giratina's fast move is heavily resisted by Guzzlord, but of course they're going to be able to output a lot of pressure with the Dragon Claws. They go for back-to-back Dragon Claws. They are still not switching out, so I'm going to farm up 3 Dragon Tails and go for the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw into the Giratina will be lethal. In the back, it's Armored Mewtwo. Opponent running some serious spice. I'm pretty low HP on the Guzzlord, but they are going to have a miserable time if they try and Confusion down. Confusion double resisted by the Guzzlord, and I'm able to make it to another crunch. This will be grabbing the final shield from the opponent. Guzzlord refusing to die, making it to a third crunch. Crunch will be taking care of that Armored Mewtwo, and that's a good game. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Toxicroak into Shadow Dragonite. This is a weak spot for this team, as neither the Toxicroak nor the Guzzlord is a particularly big fan of Dragonite. Save Switch Steelix is going to be answered by Virizion. Virizion firing off the Sacred Sword into the Steelix, as Steelix will return fire with the Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs will hit for super effective damage, but Virizion is very bulky, able to withstand that damage. Virizion over farming by 1 and playing to the CMP tie. Very nice counting there by my opponent. Sacred Sword, of course, will be lethal, but I can now use this as an opportunity to get an energy head start on Toxicroak, because Toxicroak will be able to farm all the way down and exit this matchup with over a Sludge Bomb, and Sludge Bomb is extremely threatening to Shadow Dragonite. In comes the Shadow Dragonite, going to be met with the Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb grabs shield advantage. In comes Guzzlord, and the Dragonite is not switching out. They're taking massive damage from the Dragon Tails. They must be weak in the back. Dragonite gets farmed down in the back. It is Jellicent, and Guzzlord is looking to sweep once again. Crunch, massive damage onto the Jellicent, and the opponent concedes the match. We see a Core Breaker on the lead in the next match, Toxicroak into Shadow Swampert. I need to stay in this matchup, as unfortunately, Shadow Swampert is a pretty big Core Breaker for this team, as it does well into the Toxicroak and the Steelix. I go for the Mud Bomb, but my opponent reads me like a book, making a beautiful catch onto, of all things, a Dragon Tail Shadow Gyarados. Now on Gyarados, Dragon Tail is just worse than Dragon Breath. You're never really going to want to use the Elite TM here. Unfortunately, the opponent has used the Elite TM, so they're stuck running the inferior move to Dragon Breath. I'm going to continue to farm with the Steelix. I am going to be going down a shield here, but that means I get to exit this matchup with energy. And if my opponent is going to be sending in that Shadow Swampert, they're going to take a lot of damage from Steelix. But they actually send in a third Shadow Pokemon, it's Shadow Charizard. I fire off the Psychic Fangs, opponent switches into the Shadow Swampert, and I fire off the Psychic Fangs on alignment. The reason being is I needed to get this damage before they made it to a move, and now I can send in the Guzzlord. I will respect the Earthquake here, opponent is going to full send, and Guzzlord at full HP is looking to sweep. I'm going for the crunch here, hoping for a potential defense drop onto the Charizard. Charizard commits the shield. We do not see the defense drop, and from here, I'm just going to look to try and go for the farm down. They've taken a lot of damage onto the Charizard. Charizard firing off another charge move. Dragon Claw will be lethal, but I still have the Steelix alive, and Steelix will get some valuable Dragon Tails and KO the Charizard. We see a bit of a tricky lead in the next match, Toxicroak into Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini is extremely bad news for my backline, so I'm forced to stay in with the Toxicroak. As you may have noticed, I am running the level 40 Hundo Toxicroak, which means I do deal some extra damage, but that does come at the expense of quite a lot of bulk. And in this matchup, having a bulkier Toxicroak is definitely nice. I am able to successfully bait with the Mud Bomb, so may as well try it again. Let's see, is the opponent willing to shield? Yes, they are, and I managed to get all shields down. That's quite big. I'm going to double shield here because I need to get rid of the Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini cannot see my backline whatsoever. There, I actually overfarmed by 1, anticipating a potential catch, but my opponent is just going to stay in here. They send in Dragonite, I pivot into Steelix, and in comes Cobalion. And unfortunately, my opponent, I believe, switched here fast enough that they're going to be able to outpace and make the Sacred Sword before I make the Earthquake, and they did. It's a CMP tie. That is incredibly rough, as I just missed, dealing massive super effective damage. I'm gonna have to send in the Toxicroak. Toxicroak is extremely low, but I will be able to make it to the Mud Bomb. Unfortunately, Mud Bomb, despite getting buffed this season, is not going to be enough to KO. Cobalion hangs on. They're able to fire off the Sacred Sword, and now I have to send in the Guzzlord. In comes the Guzzlord. Opponent is gonna send in the Shadow Dragonite. Shadow Dragonite firing off the charge move. Can Guzzlord survive? It cannot, as Shadow Superpower gets the KO. We see another tricky lead in the next match, Toxicroak into Clefable. This Clefable is actually running Charm of all things. I wonder in this match if my opponent accidentally brought the wrong Clefable. I've definitely done that before. I have one build that has Fairy Wind and one build with worse IVs that has Charm. And here, even better for me, I end up winning CMP with the Sludge Bomb. And you know what? I will more than happily take a 2-0 shield advantage. So I'm just going to let Toxicroak go, send in the Steelix, and there's not really anything that Clefable can do here. Clefable farming up a bunch of energy, but Steelix is going to make it to the Earthquake, and this will be lethal. This is just getting rid of the Clefable, and let's see what they have in the back. They have Mandibuzz. I'm farming up energy, going for the foul play catch, but my opponent shows great patience, holding on to their energy. In the back, they have Deoxys, and Deoxys down 2 shields is in a very difficult spot as Crunch deals massive damage. Let's see, previously most Deoxys were running Thunderbolt and Psycho Boost. This one actually has Rock Slide. That's a bit unfortunate. I'm going to go for the Crunch as soon as I get there. My opponent does sneak a counter, but that doesn't matter. They get KO'd, so the counter does not register. And now I'm just waiting for my Switch Clock to come up so I can just debuff them again and again with Steelix. So I'm going to preserve the Guzzlord, as this is a really good source of fast move pressure, and now I can switch back into the Steelix and begin to lower their defense. They have no Pokemon left outside of the Mandibuzz, which means they have no way to reset these defense debuffs. Psychic Fangs does basically no damage into the Dark-type Mandibuzz, but as you can see, those defense debuffs mean that these Dragon Tails just add up more and more and more. They're actually running Dark Pulse on the Mandibuzz. That does some pretty significant damage, but it's not going to save them. As we see Steelix farming up. At this point, I can just let this go and win the game with Guzzlord. Opponent baits with an Aerial Ace, and Steelix secures the win. Hopping into the final match, and we end the video where we began it, leading Toxicroak into Shadow Charizard. I save switch into Shadow Steelix. My opponent is going to respond with an Alolan Sandslash. Alolan Sandslash, honestly not a terrible spot to be in here, as they need 2 charge moves to KO, and I can threaten a knockout with an Earthquake. But here, I actually decided to do something risky. I go for the Psychic Fangs bait, and the gamble pays off as I get a shield from my opponent. That is quite nice. I'm going to be shielding here since they shielded, and let's see. I could potentially go for the bait, but I decide against it. I don't really want to risk it, and I'm going to full send the Earthquake. Opponent is going to double shield, and you know what? Honestly, at this point, I'm just going to let the Steelix go. I got both shields down, I can farm with the Toxicroak, and as we've seen, Sludge Bomb is going to deal a ton of damage to the Charizard. So I'm going to be shielding up here as my opponent did make it to the Drill Run, and now when they send in the Charizard, I can go for a Sludge Bomb, and Sludge Bomb is going to deal massive damage. In comes the Shadow Charizard, I'm firing off the Sludge Bomb, and this is going to hurt. No shields remaining for my opponent, it connects, in comes the Guzzlord, it's Cobalion in the back. I'm hard countered, and I resign the match. All in all, I had some very good sets with Chillis' team, and was actually able to break 3200 ELO with it. This is a team that definitely does have its core breakers, as all teams do, but I do really like the flexibility of the team, and it's a team that not a lot of people expect. Like, I feel like you don't end up seeing a lot of Toxicroak and Shadow Steelix usage, so it's a team that can definitely catch some opponents off guard, and I was able to have some very nice success with it in the 31 to 3200s. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.